You know that feeling when you actually hit a milestone or you achieve something that you've been trying to for ages, you maybe doubted yourself, but you actually finally get there. And this could be anything. This could be landing a new job that you've been working really hard towards and writing down all the wins that you have and really making a proper case of why you deserve to be paid more or promoted. Or it might be starting a side hustle. It could be anything that takes time, planning, and having to back yourself. And that's exactly how we think about saving and investing at the Curve. It's how we teach everywhere across our workshops and the Investing Club on the podcast, building towards big stuff, whether that be growing your investment portfolio or saving up to buy something that actually takes time and preparation and confidence to get there. So yeah, while I was home in New Zealand, as in while I'm recording this right now, I have been so lucky to drive this incredible car around. And it's fair to say, a Lexus has made its way onto my wish list. And I didn't really ever think that investing in a car like this would be something that I would consider or would put high on my priorities. But the way that it's made me feel, the confidence that I have when driving this car, how safe I feel, it's just, yeah, I finally get it. And so what we've done is created a step-by-step guide to help you to get from wherever you are when it comes to saving for something big like a Lexus or something else, to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. Because I think that, you know, just back to what I was saying at the beginning, it's like, it's anything that's worth having is going to take hard work and time and commitment and backing yourself to get there. And so if you would like to know the best way to save and prepare and work towards, you know, a big ticket purchase like buying a car, then we've created something to help, and it's in the podcast show notes. It's totally free to download. And because Lexus isn't just a car, it's actually a lifestyle and something that I've experienced firsthand, we have chosen some seriously inspiring women to feature in the episodes that they're sponsoring. So if you would like to download the how-to guide, it's in the podcast show notes. But otherwise, back to the podcast. Welcome to Raising the Curve, a podcast designed to teach you everything that you need to know to be better with your money. Come and learn alongside me, Sophie Hallwright, a total beginner, from the finance expert, Victoria Harris.
So I've asked all of the questions you wish you could so that finance, investing and growing your wealth actually makes sense.
Yes, it's expert education, but that we promise will not be boring.
And in the wise words of Cher,
my mom said to me, you know, sweetheart, one day you should settle down and marry a rich man. And I said, Mom, I am a rich man.
Come and talk and learn and laugh with us, because together we really can raise the curve.
We are about to talk to the most incredible woman. Gosh, she really put a bee in my bonnet.
Really?
Yeah, in terms of not ever wanting to get divorced.
Really?
Yes.
Well, see, it made me think if I got divorced, I know exactly what I need to do.
Yes, but also just to avoid it would be great.
Yeah. Well, so the reason so Helen Baker is who we are about to introduce you to. And actually the reason this was a bit inspired is, look, if you have seen what's been going on in the media, aka the Coldplay concert and the meme that is, I think, maybe the biggest meme of this year.
Oh, definitely.
Which is whatever his name is.
It's become a verb.
Like, did you see Sophia Richie and her husband's?
Yeah, everyone's doing it at the baseball.
So funny.
But it's also now being called, like, don't get Coldplayed. Like, it's becoming a verb. It's quite funny.
So basically, we thought, look, there's a lot of people that are going to either face a separation or divorce, whether that be planned or not. Obviously, for, you know, the couple at Coldplay, that was not planned. And they're all of a sudden probably both facing a relationship breakdown. So we wanted to speak to an expert who can help run you through the financial and practical and admin steps to get you into a place where if you are divorcing or separating from your partner, you've got all your things, you know, lined up and ready to go.
And Helen Baker, she is a qualified, practicing and licensed financial advisor, so she knows her shit. She's also the author of 2 books. One of them is On Your Own 2 Feet, and it's all about steady steps to women's financial independence. And then the second one, also On Your Own 2 Feet, is about divorce, your Survive and Thrive Financial Guide. Great title.
Did you, when you were speaking to her, I was thinking like, you know, when you're over here in the UK, a lot of people say things like, oh, so you're from Australia. You're like, oh, I'm from New Zealand. It's a different country. Hearing her accent,
Australia.
the pearl of assets. The pearl of assets.
It's like, how on earth do people get us confused? No. It was really, really great conversation and so many good takeaways. If you're unfortunately heading into divorce or you want to prepare yourself, financially to make sure that if you should, hopefully not, but if you should eventually get to a divorce stage, you've got all your ducks in a row. Yeah, lots of really good nuggets.
I also think this is quite an important conversation. Like, even if you're in a really happy relationship, perhaps you have a friend that's going through something shit, if you can help them with like the practical, actionable things that they need to do while they're struggling with the emotional side, I just think being aware of this regardless of how happy your relationship is, you never know, you could get cold played. And I think that this is
a very
one for
timely
anyone.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we will get into that. But if you would like to find out more about Helen Baker and the work that she does, we'll put some links in the podcast show notes.
So we have the amazing Helen Baker in the studio. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Hi.
Can we start with just, I guess, winding back the clock a bit? Can you just tell us about your journey? How did you find yourself working in the financial advice space? You're particularly focusing on helping women because we love that. We love that space.
Also got a very feminine audience.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually not my first career. So my background was originally management accounting inside corporates. And then I actually lived and worked in London for a very long time, working for some very big corporates there around project management and so on. And then I came back to Australia and started to try and get a job back in Australia after a long time, which was quite hard actually. And then at one point I started being a general manager for a financial planning firm. And then when that all changed, there was an opportunity to be an advisor. And I was thinking, oh no, I don't want to do that. It's just like selling things for commission. But for me, when I looked at it, it was, fixing problems. It was finance. It was helping people to achieve their goals or to avoid a mistake. And it was about people. So I was like, yep, I give it a go. And what happened back then was, you never queued for the ladies' toilets at a conference for advisors because there were so few female advisors.
The opposite of going to a Taylor Swift concert.
It's like a sports game. Yeah. The women's toilets are always, there's no one there. It's great.
And so from there, it's become more and more of a thing that, women really do like talking to women. They feel safer. They feel like they're comfortable enough to ask a question that they might consider is stupid, which it's not, because we often just don't know what we don't know. So blurting it out and asking the question is good. And then from there, it's just kind of grown, and the On Your Own 2 Feet brand has grown, and the books have grown, and everything's sort of grown to see how many more people we can actually get the message out to, because not everybody can get advice, afford advice, or need advice that's big enough to charge the fees that advisors are stuck with because of the cost of the licenses every year. So, and that's a kind of a global phenomenon. So there's opportunities for everybody to get some takeaway that helps them to get on and stay on their own 2 feet.
I love the idea of on your own 2 feet.
It's such a great tagline.
Yeah, it's really empowering. So what was sort of the moment where you thought, okay, I need to really go deeper into this and I need to sort of pursue the whole financial planning and management side of things more, because there's this huge gap of women who are being underserved and don't have the right financial advisors to go to?
Yes, I think it was a lot more clients. It just kept on growing and growing, and those similar questions that started to get asked. And that's what made me think, okay, if I put a book together that nails some of these things, that helps people, that will certainly help a lot of people who can get started.
What were some of those key questions?
For the divorce one, it was predominantly around women coming in after they'd signed on the dotted line. So they would come in and say, hey, this is what I walked away with. Can I still put my kids through school? How does this all work? And you'd sort of looked at the assets that they took away or the way that they set up actually cost them money because they had to be sold because they weren't the right asset. So the shares or the investments were not appropriate for them. And then in Australia, we have capital gains tax issues when these things happen. So people, go through the process of the legal action only to walk away with less than what they anticipated they were going to walk away with.
Can I just pause you for a second for anyone that's like, what do you mean they were wrong? Would an example of that be, say it's a young mum, she's 45, and the investments are her long-term kind of like retirement amounts, but 90% are in incredibly low-risk investments that are not going to be getting her the returns that she needs to be able to retire when she's 65. Therefore, she needs to sell those and reinvest in different things that are more appropriate for who she is, how old she is, and what she's trying to achieve in her life. And therefore, she gets whacked with the capital gains tax, because rather than taking the things that are appropriate for her or structuring it in a way that she's able to kind of be picky about what actually she would want in her portfolio, she's kind of like, this is what I've got. And then it's not quite right. So they end up worse off because they have to be sold and reinvest. Is that kind of...
Or on a house.
And a house is often the one. The house is often the big ticket item where, you know, it was bought for this, it's being sold for that, and that's a big one. One of the other mistakes is taking the actual house where you live, which can often make sense because, you know, that keeps the kids in school. It means you keep your social circle the same. But generally that is at the expense of having any other investments or superannuation or pension funds set aside for you, which means down the track you have a problem.
And so is that people that are inheriting a house, but they're not getting any other assets? So
yeah,
is that what you mean?
So that's your only asset.
Right.
Yeah. Rather than like structuring the deal where it may have been like, okay, you know what, you can take the smaller beach house, or we can sell the family house and divvy up the assets, and then, or you can have some retirement savings over here. You can have half the pot that we put aside.
So it's just not very balanced. It's basically like, it's just easier to say you get the house and the kids can stay in there and I'll take everything else.
And they haven't actually thought of the next step of like, okay, but if we need to sell the house and we have to pay capital gains, then what I actually get is less, and like all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you know, things happen. Like, you know, does that mean now that you've got to spend whatever little bit you had on the side repairing the roof or repairing these things, and then, you know, can you afford to do that? Does it mean now that you can't even take the kids on holidays, you can't have a holiday yourself? There's a lot of impacts that will happen for people based on those decisions. So it's not necessarily wrong in every case. You know, for some clients, I have a plan for one in particular where they are holding on to the house, and fortunately property prices have increased a lot for her. But the intention is, once they're through school, is to downsize that property and release some extra cash in order to do that. But it does make it tight from everyday living. It means she has to work. It puts a lot of pressure on other areas of her life in order to do that. So again, it depends on everybody's situation, but there's multiple mistakes. Other ones are just thinking, well, the lawyer will tell me if this is not a good idea to take these assets. And that's not always true either, because lawyers cannot give financial advice. So they can give you legal advice, and so they look to partner. But they were people who were saying, hey, you need to go and see Helen, or you need to read this book. But a lot of times people didn't do it. And so these were the things that end up catching people out.
So was majority of your work to try and prepare women particularly to have structured and be in like the right frame of mind, have the right checks and balances in place, should their relationship break down, they're not left in a situation that is like less than compromising? Is the whole idea of your work that you're trying to get people before?
Yeah, preferably before, because even if it's clean and simple, at least they know. Because generally women who've walked in, you know, they're overwhelmed, they feel sad, their heads are down, but when they leave, you can see hope in their face, their heads are held high, they're confident, they're excited about their future. They're what I call armed and dangerous, not in a bad way, but in an assertive way. So can't get the wool pulled over your eyes when the spouse might say, oh, no, you can't have access to that. That doesn't count. That's mine. You know, understanding what goes in the asset pool and understanding which ones make sense for you. And then we do often some scenarios. What if you took that? Because when you have to negotiate, they may come back with something different to what you're expecting, and you could go, yeah, okay, that's still okay for me. It's not as perfect as number one, but number three still works for me.
There's a great quote, and I think it's the reason that I've been single for so long, is that the biggest financial decision you'll ever make in your life is who you marry or who your partner is. Do you agree with this?
I haven't heard that one. That's good. I mean, we often use the, man is not a financial plan. And some guys will say to me, Helen, that's really mean. And I said, you know what? It's not, because you don't want somebody pretending to be in love with you for your money. You want someone to be in this relationship because they actually really love you. And we want the women in the relationship because they actually love you, but they can stand on their own 2 feet too. So it's a win-win. It's not anti-man. It's like, go the girls.
It's quite interesting. I heard this. This is a slight pivot and really not in line with your work at all. But I heard someone saying this the other day where they were talking about that. Oh, it was on a Diary of a CEO podcast, and it was a divorce lawyer. And he was talking about the economic exchange, but also just the exchange in general that happens in a partnership. It's economic in different ways. And, someone might have money, someone might have looks, someone might have skills to do X, Y, Z, someone might have this, and it's being clear about what that exchange is. And are you happy with what you're getting in return for what you're giving? And are you being clear about it? Because there's a lot of young women or young men or whatever that are with someone where you might from the outside look and be confused or judgmental. But I think his whole concept was like, if you are clear and honest and open about what the exchange is, no one's getting the wool pulled up. You're being quite clear. Like, for example, if someone's 24 and is with a billionaire who's 500 kgs, maybe for her, that is the exchange she wants. And he also wants that.
Yeah.
And that works for them, but it's also them saying, well, come divorce, if something happens, what is it that you're expecting from me in exchange for what you've given up to be in this relationship, and vice versa? And having decided that early, which I was just like, oh, I quite like the way.
Kind of makes sense.
It kind of makes sense, because it's sort of being like, let's put some numbers around this for what this actually feels like for both of us.
What would you exchange? What would be your?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I'm not in a relationship right now. I don't have the thing, but it just made me think differently about people that look at, like, inverted commas, gold diggers, and think, actually, hold on a second. He's choosing this because that's what he wants and he values, and he's putting his value in her beauty and her youth and her energy, and she's putting value in his security and his money. And what does that mean if they split up? How much of that is she entitled to?
And I think that's the question, right? Making sure that when or if things do end, that one is not left with the rough end of the stick.
Yeah, or they've talked about it and they know, and it's really clear, so that should that happen, it's not a question mark of, well, my exchange or my value was this, because you've talked about it.
Why do you think it is so hard to talk about finances in a relationship and causes so much ickiness and so much tension, yet it is literally fundamental? It's like the one thing you could do to kind of just ease a lot of things within the relationship, but nobody wants to do it. It's so weird.
I think it's a couple of things. We were brought up not to talk about politics, religion, sex and money. So a lot of people have been brought up that those are the things that you just don't talk about. But I think we're becoming more liberated and happy to discuss those. I think we probably just don't know what are the questions to ask and understand what are the issues we're trying to protect ourselves from. So going back to that relationship you were talking about before, it might be discussed and agreed, and then there's the documentation part, because when things can go wrong, it's like, well, you said this and I said that, but nobody's documented anything. It's become very emotional. No one wants to part with their money. The other person may now have children, and it's a different dynamic to what they walked into. So there's things to consider all the time, but it's, some people will talk about having a finance date where that's what they do discuss on, or give it a piece of time every month or whatever and look at it. To me, it's about getting the same goals and having similar values so that you can go in the direct path, whereas often you'll find one's a spender, one's a saver. That's difficult because you've got this push and pull that's happening and it's awkward. But there are things that you can still work around about how you manage those kind of things. But yeah, you kind of want to get it out on the table, maybe not on the first date.
But it's interesting you say the spender and the saver is, an awkward, uncomfortable dynamic, because I almost think, in my 33 years of dating, my big career, I would say that I've come to the conclusion that actually having someone chaotic and loud and spontaneous and fun and blah, blah, blah is probably not the kind of person that I should be with. And actually the polarity of someone that is stable and secure and consistent and on time is probably good. Well, I guess just in general, I think I've realized that, it's not necessarily opposites attract. It's more the fact that if you're both good or bad at the same things, who fills the gaps? And actually being able to have a team or a teammate who is good when you're not so strong, I think is quite positive. And I'm talking more like in a personality matching situation here. But then if we were to sidestep into finances, if you have two incredibly liberal spenders, isn't that in itself kind of dangerous? Like, isn't it good to have someone that can rein the other in and someone that can, like, say, live a little sometimes? Like,
I think it comes down to the goals, though. If your goals is to spend on nice things, or you both value nice things and you want to spend, then you'll both be happy. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you're in a relationship dynamic with a spender and a saver, and you're not aligned on your financial goals, that was when it causes tension, because it's like one is out there spending, one is out there saving, and you haven't had that discussion on, like, what are the bigger things that you're trying to achieve? Is it that you want to buy a house in 3 years' time? Okay, we've got X amount to spend and we've got X amount we need to save. Therefore, there's kind of guardrails. Do you know what I mean? And you're both
prioritizing
You're
the same
both
thing.
prioritizing, but you can both also lean into kind of, I guess, different parts in terms of spending and saving. But if you haven't had that discussion, then that causes tension, because one of you is assuming the other one's spending too much, but you haven't actually figured out what that bigger goal is or what you're trying to achieve.
Like, you're fighting about the smaller thing opposed to zooming out.
Yeah.
No, I just think, if you have two spenders, you'll probably have a very good time, but at some point you'll run out of money, or you won't have enough for the future. And when you're far from the future, you probably care less, but that's when the dynamics change over time. People shift. I remember there were two people within the space of 2 weeks who said similar things. It was like, my 20s was for fun, my 30s was for my career, and in my 40s, I want to maximize the opportunities that I have because I don't want to work until 70. And that's absolutely right. Like, different decades, you'll want to do different things. You'll also want to do different things if you're in a partnership or whether you're single. So those things will change all the time. And whilst you can be the spender, have fun, not have anything for the future, if you're both the savers, you probably do nothing, go nowhere, not having a great time, and then have this big chunk of money. And, the big leveler in the future is obviously the relationship, but also health can change. So it's important to make sure that you find a nice balance between, hey, we got to live a little, but we got to plan for the future too. And if you kind of know what that looks like and you get an idea about, if we do this, 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 and this for the future, this is what our long term will look like. So we can kind of get on with enjoying this now, knowing that's what we're going to work towards, big picture.
I think that's the key question, though, and we get asked that a lot, is like, how much should I prioritize now versus the future? And it's such an individual question, right?
Like, how to prioritize or use the resources you have for the life you're living currently versus the future life that you want to live.
Like traveling now because you don't have kids, right? Versus squirreling money away for your retirement. Like, it's just a constant guilt of spending money, but then not saving. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
That's the big one. But I always say to people, you kind of work in brackets. So, yes, you've got this young period where footloose and fancy free, and you may or may not have a mortgage. There's things that you might be wanting to save for down the track, but this traveling or having a good time is the priority right now. Then generally when you're having children, you're kind of knuckling down. You might even just go to one salary because you want to stay at home, spend more time with the kids. And then you're probably saving nothing at that point in time, but you're not, and that's a part of the deal, knowing that when the kids get off your hands, then you're going to go hard and really crack the whip and put away as much as you can. And if you can do bits along the way, that's obviously of benefit, because time is your biggest friend when you're investing, because it compounds on top of each other and it keeps on growing. Same as a mortgage, you're trying to pay a bit more to get rid of it quicker, but just also being a little bit kind to yourself, being aware, but, it's not all about down the track, because we've got to have some life along the way. Otherwise, like these things like divorce often happen because people become disillusioned, unhappy, even unfaithful, because they're not having a good time as it is, and we're so stringent and we become boring. So we've got to find a piece of action that makes us happy ties in with our goals, ties in with our values, knowing this is what we're agreeing to at this stage. It will change, then we'll change to that, then we'll change to that.
I like the 20s is to have fun, 30s is for your career, and 40s is to start taking it seriously. I've got a few more years to take it seriously.
I love that that's the bit you took from that.
I know. I'm like, I can work with that. Simple. Yeah.
I
Effective.
think what you said really, you said, when you have kids, that's the point where you're not really saving. And then after that, you're knuckling down. I'm like, God, it sounds
It's
like
all
a
downhill from
hectic
here.
30 years, doesn't it? Because it's like having kids is firstly exhausting and expensive. On top of that, to know that you don't really have much fun money, but
Well,
you're
money's not a
also not
holiday.
investing. Then after they've left and you're finally like, God, I can breathe, stunning. Then you have to go head down. But it's just exhausting, isn't it?
Yes.
Sorry to sound like depressed, but
But these are our best days.
But what I'm trying to say here is I think that balance piece is more important than ever throughout all those stages, because even when you have kids and you're not able to save, for example, because so much is going on, your kids, what you said there about, but that's also when people become unfaithful because they're unhappy because they're so restricted, because the pressure of raising kids, you're not actually future-proofing your finances because you can't, and you don't have money to have fun. It is a really difficult balance. And that's why I think, I don't know, I guess the more financially independent you could be, or also perhaps if you were to save and invest earlier, even though we've just said the 20s are footloose and fancy free, if you were doing a little bit earlier, surely that makes it easier by the time you're having kids. And then,
yeah.
do you know what I mean? If we were investing from when we were 15, even if it was just a small amount, by the time you have kids, it's not this, we're so stretched, we can't afford to go to the movies.
Or you could dip in to go for a holiday to help alleviate the stress, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of the countries that are listening to your wonderful podcast is there, certainly in Australia, and the UK has it with pensions as well, we call it superannuation in Australia. So now 12% of your salary goes into superannuation. So you're technically, as long as you're working, you are technically still investing, and investing in a tax-free, eventually becomes tax-free, but a tax favourable structure along the journey. So you are actually still doing some investing, even though you might pause the investing that you're doing on top of that for a period of time. But I think this is where the financial advice bit works the best. We might sit down with clients and go, if you do X, Y, Z, this is where you end up. If you do X, Y, Z, A, this is where you end up. And if you can see that, hey, having a good time and doing some extra things that we didn't plan on, or doing a reno, or doing those things, can I still get pretty close to where I'm at? You probably go ahead and do it. It's when the gap is so, distorted that you go, yeah, we really need to think about what we're doing, and maybe we do have to do this, and maybe I have to keep working, or I don't, or those sorts of things. But working from a place where you can see what the numbers look like, see what the trajectory looks like, and then make quality decisions, again, that your goals and values are aligned to, then you're on the path, you're on the agreed path that you decided to do together.
And I think that's it, right? It's having that visibility, or having that view of this is what my life will look like when I'm 65, or this is what my life will look like when I'm 65, which could be scary, but you'd rather know now than when you're 64, or
people will always say, oh, I wish I met you 5 years ago, or I wish I met you 10 years ago. And I think, yeah, me too. But the thing is, for a lot of people, you still got time to make a better position than where you are right now, and use the smarts. There's a lot of strategies that we have, certainly here in Australia, where you can put money into superannuation, you get tax deductions for that. There's things that you can do that make the overall outcome not just about investment, but about strategy as well, and underpinning everything that you build on top with what I call those 5 foundations. No one's ever passed that test in 16 years. So there are things that people need to do in there, but it's all got to work together so that should you lose your job, you've got a plan. If a health event comes, you've got a plan. And that's the thing that then you can rest easy. You don't need to stress. And that's important. We don't need women stressing, because we do. If I say to women, what's the most important thing about money to you? They will say security. We are technically wired as women for security, financial security. It's important generally that we have a roof over our head, but we need financial security. So making sure we nail that, then we can just get on with living and enjoying ourselves more.
easy.
Sounds like a dream.
Sounds so easy.
Before we get into the idea of, an unraveling marriage or an unraveled marriage and what you should be doing, can we talk, because there'll be a lot of people who are listening to this who are probably, by and large in reasonably happy relationships and not planning on leaving and, quite comfortable, perhaps have younger kids or are thinking about it at some stage in the future. What would you say are some of the most important conversations or questions to have within that relationship to ensure that you are A, on the same page, and B, prepared should the worst happen one day?
Yeah, I think, again, it's coming back to understanding what's important about money for both parties. What do they value? What was money like growing up for them, and how has that affected them? So you can find some people who money was very tight for them, and so they therefore live very tight. For others, it was tight for them, so now they just splurge and go wild. They just don't want to be restricted anymore. So people's responses to past upbringing around money will determine sort of where they're going to go. And again, it's getting those things out on the table. So it's not, should we save an extra 100 this week? It's about, how do you feel about that? Is it more important that we have some fun now, but we work longer? Is it more important that we go medium now, but we want to drop our hours down the track? Is it more important to retire? How important is the house? Is it really important to have a big house? Are we happy with something else so we can travel more? And defining what those things are and listening to what the other person is saying, and then presenting different scenarios about, this is what I was thinking. Is that what you're thinking?
So it's almost like understanding where you've come from and then understanding where you're wanting to go, and how do you find something that feels good for both of you?
Yes. And finding where those differences are, and are we agreed to be the differences? Because it's, even in some cases, not everybody wants to retire at the same time. I have people who will say, I'm happy to work longer, I enjoy it, but maybe not full time. I'll go down to 2 or 3 days a week. The other person is like, no way, I don't want to do this past this age, physically I can't do it, or whatever. And then an agreement. Now, that often changes, because when the other person retires, they're like, I'm going to work, and they're not. So they want to back off. And things might change around. Parents' situations is a big one now, where we're actually seeing relationships break down, and then women particularly struggling to find their own place to live. So they're having to move in with their daughter, or situations like that. So you have to kind of think about your own situation and also what's happening up and down the family tree as well. And care is a big one as well, caring for parents or grandparents.
What do you say to anyone listening that is like, oh, that doesn't apply to me? I'm in the best marriage or the best, partnership.
We don't need to have these
We don't need to worry about
conversations.
it. My husband or my wife, they'll take care of me. It's fine. What do you say to those people that are literally just turn a blind eye and think that, it's going to be absolutely sunshine and rainbows for the rest of their lives?
Yay, if it is sunshine and rainbows, I think that's fantastic. How lovely. I still think you need visibility, because, I don't know if you've heard about the trad wife that's started to become a bit of a thing, back up there again. So again, there are situations where it works, also playing to your strengths at times where you can't be across everything. Someone might be very good at the finances, someone might be very good at cooking, and you delegate those away. But it is really important to have the visibility for you to know what is going on, because generally, again, over periods of time, I've seen where one partner has done nothing, just put money in term deposits. So similar to what you're saying before, low risk, low return. So they should have been in a better position and they're not. Or you've got the partner investing in all crazy stuff that has gone bust, and your money has gone bust and you weren't aware. So it's really important that you are across what's happening. You understand the risks that are associated with that. You understand what these outcomes mean, and plan for some things that might change around anything, whether it be health, again, having to care for a parent, something like that. How does that affect your outcome, and have those discussions? If you're still fine after that, great, but always maintain visibility, I think, is key.
Imagine if you all of a sudden decided to ask your partner, hey, honey, where is our money? What have we invested in? And they're like, Yeah, so we've invested 100% in this brand new coin in the crypto space. And look, no one's told me to invest in it. You just don't know unless you ask the question and you're making no effort to be involved in those decisions or at least understanding what's happening.
It's also half your money, right?
How bizarre.
yeah.
Like, imagine how scary. I mean, the amount of trust that we put in is kind of scary sometimes. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's really beautiful that people are, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, we are really happy and we're in a relationship, we've been together 20 years, like I'm really comfortable. That's amazing. And we're not trying to discredit that, but it's more the idea that money is so inherently personal, and the way that you invest, the way that you personally invest is probably going to be quite different to your partner. Are you investing in a way that's in a middle ground for both of you? Because 100% in crypto might not be aligned with your values or your risk tolerance. But if you have no idea and you're not actively having a say in where it's being invested, then if you do divorce or if something goes wrong or you lose all your money, it's not really fair to be like, that's your fault, because I feel like you have the responsibility to
Ask the
find
questions.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well, knowing when we talk about those foundations, number 3 is around insurances. What life insurances are in place if your partner who has taken care of, your spouse has taken care of all of these things for you, but did they actually insure themselves? So I remember one of the first ladies that I met with, her husband had passed away. He'd been invested in all sorts of stuff, hadn't done the insurances, and then, lived in a house for 34 years that they had to sell. Well, the widow had to sell and move out. Now, we got her set up in another house and set for life with the money that she needed, but she had no idea what was going on. And again, if you can, part of it, I think one of the opportunities you have is like blame us. Say, hey, I listened to this podcast. It talked about understanding what's going on with my finances. Can we go and sit down with an advisor together and just so I can get an idea of what's happening, get it out on the table so you actually see what's going on? And that's another one where it's really good to be accountable to somebody. There was one where the lady won't mind me saying this because she's asked me at various speaking gigs to speak about it. But
Oh, that's so cool, by the way, that she said that. Is she wanting other people to learn from what happened to her? That's amazing.
yeah, so her husband was a lot older than her, and he was able to access into what we call our superannuation here in Australia, and his business had got in a bit of trouble, and so he was accessing the money out of that super to prop up the business. And unfortunately, after a while, there was nothing left. And the business was still a problem. And so, another one where they actually had to lose their house, managed to work some things that gets it sorted and rebuild going forward. But it was that if they had been accountable, we would be able to see the supers getting smaller and smaller. These investments are getting smaller. It's like ringing bells. What's going on? So that can be a nice way if you're one of those people who's struggling to have the conversation, you can bring it out in the open and just say, hey, I just wanted to find out what's happening with this and stay accountable.
I like that. Blame it on us. Blame it on us. Be like, I listened to this great podcast and
Totally.
they said, happy to be blamed.
Yeah. Make me
definitely.
the bad cop.
Yeah.
I don't care. So let's move on to the idea of someone's potentially in a slightly unhappy relationship. And there's a part of them that's thinking, I really don't want to be here. I need to think about leaving. And I don't know how to do it emotionally, but I know I need to start thinking practically about the finances. How could someone quietly prepare financially if either she wants to leave or she's suspecting that someone's going to leave them? What are the important things to check, do, know, have done?
So again, this will come back to how much visibility you have, how much knowledge do you know about what the actual situation is, and importantly, do you have access to your own bank account? So I always recommend people have an emergency fund. So it's important that you've got something set aside to either allow you to go, but ideally what you're trying to do is use that time to get advice before you go. So you make wise decisions before you actually call it. So it's back to that thing of being armed and dangerous in a good way, is knowing, okay, this is the situation, this is going to be what I'm going to do going forward. So you need to get some legal advice, some financial advice, and know what you need to know before you make the move is kind of good. And it will help you get focused away from the emotions to the practicalities of doing it. Bear in mind, though, that all of these assets form what we call the asset pool. So they all count in terms of what gets divided where, but you're technically just drawing on some of those assets that can be repaid back or adjusted down the track in order for you to get the advice and feel confident about the decisions that you're making.
I remember reading something about a famous divorce. I can't remember whose it was, but their advice was go and spend heaps of money leading up to the divorce.
It was that actor from Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah. And she was advised to go and spend lots and lots of money in the lead up to the divorce so that the payout or her living costs would be, assumed to be as high as they were.
You need a new Maserati every month.
Yeah. Okay, we need to give you a monthly payment of $100,000, rather than what your normal spending is like $20,000. I mean, is that probably not the best thing to do?
It sounds like a very American kind of approach to it.
It was definitely an American couple.
Yeah, I think I talk to clients about, what is your spending plan? So I don't tend to use the word budget because budget feels a bit restrictive, and we are going to have to spend money on the groceries, go on holidays, get our hair done, so on. So work out what that is, work out what the costs are for the kids, because often, generally speaking, the children will be having more time with the mum than they will with the dad, and the dad will pay some child support, but it's just generally nowhere near as what you need to help provide for kids. So it's understanding, again, what are the costs that you need to be planning for so that when you come to the negotiation table, you can, have documentation, you've done your homework, you are, again, armed and dangerous enough to say this is actually the cost, because perhaps he hasn't got any idea, what the costs are.
Honestly, can you imagine having 4 children and it costing you $2,000 a week to pay for their food, their schooling, their after-school activities, blah, 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 the doctor, and having child support of $400 and then having to make up 3/4 of that? It honestly makes me so angry to think that there's so many people in that situation.
I panic even thinking about losing my income or being on low income, for my own personal expenses and my dog, but let alone having 3 or 4 dependents where, you might have to sell the family home, which for them would be so incredibly emotional and distressing. You might have to, imagine having to put them into different schools because you can't afford, they lose their friends. There'd just be so many things that you would try your utmost to do to not. And you can see why some people go quote unquote a little crazy, right? Because there is so much emotion in it.
And guilt. A lot of times it's guilt.
But also, sorry, why are we calling it child support? They're your children. This isn't your ex-wife's children that you're supporting with a little bit of your pocket money. I just think it's so messed up. The whole rhetoric around kids and around who's responsible and around parental leave and around the financial support. It is so bizarre that majority of that, even when you said kids generally will spend more time with the mum, it's why?
Well, then they should get a lot more.
But also, why is that?
Yeah.
Why is it that she's more responsible for the kids? It's just so messed up.
I hate the narrative when you see divorces in the paper or wherever it is, even Jeff Bezos and Mackenzie Scott, and it was she instantly became the one of the wealthiest women in the world because she got a payout of Amazon shares from the divorce. And I was and everyone was commenting, being oh, she did nothing for that and she just got paid. And I was there is no way you can tell me that man had 3 or 4 kids and built one of the most successful businesses in the world.
And she did nothing.
Without the support of a partner, like a wife like her that helps support and take care of everything else around that. I was just he would never get to where he is. Anyway, it just really frustrates me when people say,
about divorces, like she got half. It's like, maybe she should have got more, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big thing because, like, certainly here in Australia, you know, we have the retirement gap from women having time off work to look after children, just even in happy relationships. You've got the gender pay gap where we're still underpaid against what the men are doing for the same thing. We have what I call career choice gap. So women generally will be working in jobs that don't pay as high a salary. So the caring roles, you know, the childcare, aged care, etc. And then we have the actual caring gap where we're giving up work in order to take care of parents or grandparents and so on. So by nature, the caring piece of us, it really takes some sacrificial hits. So, yeah, to your point, it's probably like the camp should tilt further because the husband's ability to recover financially is generally quicker because their salaries are higher.
I know. Sorry. Sometimes I think we need like a punching bag in this room to be able to like work our anger out on. Now, there's a few quick questions that we'd love to ask before we get through to like the idea of rebuilding and sort of getting back on your own 2 feet after a divorce or a separation. But in the middle of this, so like let's just use the Coldplay example. We have, you know, the CEO of whatever that company was and the head of HR.
Astronomer.
Yep, caught in the act. They are all of a sudden very quickly, no doubt, going through some pretty awful at-home dynamics where no doubt that they're probably going to be separating from their partners. Who knows? But let's just say that's happening. Why is it important to like cancel credit cards quickly or start updating things like utility bill names and where, you know, like all
changing
of those
passwords and PIN
admin
codes.
pieces.
Yeah.
Can we just go through like what are the immediate admin things that need to be thought about if and when you're going through perhaps a sudden divorce or a sudden separation?
Yeah, so absolutely the ones that you mentioned. I talk about stopping the leakage and getting control over what you can get control of, with the ultimate being that you are totally in control of your own financial future, however long that takes to get grasped across everything that you've got. But the leakage, sure, the risk, you know, every bank would have dealt with these before. So you want to be able to, if there's mortgages or what we call offset accounts with money in them, we want to start to minimise what that is. Yes, money can come out equivalent to each other to get the advice that you need, but then you want to cap it because your credit rating is at risk if things keep going. And more importantly, if money has been spent and it's gone, it's gone. So you can't get it back. So you want to make sure that you're trying to stop that as quickly as possible and protect yourself so you maximise what the outcomes are for you going forward. And then, yes, everything that is personal to you, access to your emails, access to your bank account, access to everything, phones, like you need to get control over those things. And one of the things we have, again, in Australia, and I think it's similar in the UK and as probably is in other countries around the world, you must be able to get access to your own financial money that you can have on your side. If you do not, it's considered financial abuse, which is a form of domestic violence or domestic abuse, as they call it in the UK, which is an offence, a criminal offence. So it is important that you do get that money. If you don't, you need to talk to a lawyer who can get a court order to get you money so you can stand on your own 2 feet.
Do you mean if that's like a joint account and then one partner goes and changes that or freezes that, that's when it's considered financial abuse?
Yeah, or when there's situations where the other person has no access to the money, there are dynamics where, you know, all the money is in one person's name. Perhaps you're not working, so you don't even have an income stream for yourself that you could transfer that your salary over to a different account and make decisions. You have to be able to get access to your own money, good times and bad times, whether you're in a relationship or not. You must have that autonomy.
And so then why are things like cancelling credit cards or why is that not then you committing financial abuse against the other person?
Well, you want to get in touch and say, like, we need to cut these off, but then the other person needs to have access and there needs to be agreements in place about what those limits are, what it's going to be used for. And this is where you will need sort of mediation or some legal advice around what you can do to protect each other. Make sure you've still got access to funds, but capping any leakage that is happening. both ways.
So when you say, so just being super, super transparent here, is it the idea that, okay, we're separating, which means our romantic relationship has stopped, therefore our spending and our leakage in different areas needs to stop. So everything needs to be paused. We need to pause our credit cards. We need to pause any repayments. Everything needs to just be like settled. We need to make sure that we both have a certain amount to be able to like live and function until we've sorted everything out. But essentially it's like all business is stopping right now until we are on the same page with what's happening with what.
Yeah, an agreement with the bank if there is a mortgage attached, like what are your obligations? Do you still need to meet repayments? Do you get a period of time where there's some reprieve? What are you going to do about that in order to make sure that it just doesn't run away with itself?
And then at that point, it's like starting the conversations with external advisors or people who can help you to navigate the actual detangling of all of your assets and money. But I'm guessing the idea is that you want to have predetermined how that's being untangled so that it's not then emotionally charged and how are we doing this? It's more or less like, here's our prenup or here's our contract that we've already agreed to and this is what's happening.
Yeah. And again, it can be something like the idea is to be as amicable as possible, because if you run down the legal lane for a very long time, you just find yourself in Mexican standoff when actually what you're trying to do is release the financial assets so you can get on with living your life. You don't want to spend 2 or 3 years in turmoil going around these things. And some are uglier than others, but generally you can get to a point where you're mediating and saying, this is what I need, this is what we're agreeing to. I talk in the book about the 4 steps that they have in Australia around what are the things that they're looking for that determines whether you get 50-50 or 60-40 or all of those things, so that you can then look at the asset pool, what's in there, what percentage does that calculate to be, what makes sense for me to keep, sell, trade, and when do I sell and trade? Because do we do that as a couple, where the cost of the taxes together? So I look at one of the couples that I had and it was amicable. He earned significantly more than her. So we managed it in a way where we sold assets that belonged in her name with a lesser tax, but split the assets overall the right way. But the overall wealth turned out better. But you can only do that in an amicable way where everyone comes out better. And at the end of the day, it's falling through to your children. So you want the best outcome and do things in a smart way.
And then once you've gone through all that emotional, legal, financial turmoil, how do you help women in particular kind of, I guess, rebuild and find that confidence again and that financial stability? Because that must be super tough. They've had this really, really steep learning curve in terms of, learning about the finances and legalities and everything. So how do you help them, I guess, rebuild after that?
It would be so scary to go from being in this dynamic where, like, particularly if you've not worked a office job or not office job, but, like a salaried job for, say, 10 years, and then you're having to go out and face the idea of how am I going to make money, or how am I, even if you get a decent amount, that doesn't last forever. Like, it would be so overwhelming.
Or even just the overwhelmingness of learning about your couple's finances if you had no idea.
Yeah,
you've just learned that, hey, we actually didn't have as much as we thought, or we had way more and my partner's an absolute DICK. It would be quite emotionally exhausting,
so much
let alone then
with,
having your life turned upside down and being like, okay, now I need to actually get on the job hunt and go, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that's nice in Australia is step number 3 in those 4 steps from a legal perspective is talks about future needs. So if you haven't been in the workforce for a while, then it should tilt a bit more in your favour to give you the time to start training, to find those jobs and, allow you to get out there and again, earn money to be on your own 2 feet. But it's about getting control over each step as you go. There are things that you can do immediately, and there are some things that you need to do over time, and then you hit pause and then you wait until settlement. They're all different. So the rebuild, which is in my trajectory, is stage 4. That's when you're starting to go, okay, I have full autonomy over everything. This is what I'm earning. This is the assets that I have. this is what I can save, or this is what I need to meet my spending habit. How do I rebuild myself from here? What do I do to make use of these investments I've got or this money that I'm earning to help me build for the future? And everybody's situation is different. But to be, when you were saying about the overwhelming, which it is for everybody, because it's very, very, very emotional. And depending on whether you knew about this coming or whether you called it, it's still emotional. And you want to step through and be kind to yourself. I say, we take our car to get serviced. We don't service it ourselves. We need to do the same to get the support that we need with our finances and have somebody step you through it so that then it's not overwhelming and you can actually see yourself achieving things, which builds your confidence and allows you then to get to that point where you are on your own 2 feet and staying there, and you feel better, you feel hopeful, you feel like I've got my future planned. I'm not scared anymore because I can see how this is all coming together and it's actually happening because I'm stepping through it.
God, I feel grateful to be learning this though now and not in a peak emotional state of my family breaking up and having to think about how you communicate to a 6-year-old what's happening to mummy and daddy. Like, I just feel so
Like, at least you can
grateful.
focus on that and not everything else.
And I think that I was thinking as you were speaking, like the shift I think that's happened in me over the last 4 years from learning about money and investing and how to manage my pay when it comes in and all of that has given me this inherent confidence that I know I will be okay if I never fall in love or meet somebody who can be my plan man, or whatever that saying is about having a financial plan as having a man, or whatever you said at the start of this conversation. And knowing that I have the control to work harder, to save more, to choose how I spend my money, I'm really grateful for this podcast and for the learning that we've done, that I'm doing that now and not in a state of like heightened emotional stress. But what are the mindset shifts or the transformations that you see in those women who perhaps didn't have this before, have gone through their divorce, separation, come out the other side feeling more confident and empowered? What is it that you see, and like what is the really like obvious, visceral ways that they respond to the newfound education or confidence they then have around money?
Yeah, so I think initially it's very overwhelming and they think, oh, I can't do it and this is really hard. But when you start to map out with them what their values are and what goals they want to achieve for themselves, where they actually make decisions totally around what they want for going forward. Sometimes if it's raw, it's still a bit of a mist, but through various values conversations, you can get an idea about where they're going to head to anywhere, so you can pull them through. But the other part is around the investment. I remember one lady who, I do everything on the whiteboard, and when I was talking through different investments and how the approaches are and things to think about, she sat back initially with her arms folded thinking, I won't get any of this. But after the discussion, she was like, oh, I totally get that. So I couldn't run a seminar on it, but I get it. And I think that's what is great, is that people are actually taking charge and getting knowledge to move themselves forward. So it's a wonderful, wonderful gift to give to anybody.
I remember someone said to me, like, Vic, you've survived 100% of your bad days so far. You'll be fine.
So beautiful.
You know, and it's like,
I love
and it's
that.
like, of course.
Oh, that's a really beautiful way to look at it. I love that.
It's so true.
I love that too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we just finish with one final sort of, I guess, takeaway for anyone that's listening or anyone that's engaging with your work in general? What do you hope for women to remember and take away when it comes to the idea of surviving the split?
Yeah, I think it's a big kaplunk in your life, but it doesn't have to define your life. In fact, for a lot of people, it's the freedom to get on and live the life that they want, because there's a lot of compromise that generally happens in relationships where, you know, sometimes maybe you sacrifice that, or you became less than yourself, and now you get to this point where you're like, yeah, I'm doing me, I'm finding me again, or I'm getting on my own 2 feet, I'm being able to achieve these things. So I think that's the wonderful part of it, is getting to see people transform, really. It's like going from the little chrysalis to the butterfly.
Oh,
Thank
Gosh,
you so much for
thank
being on the
you.
podcast. It was awesome to speak to you and meet you.
Yes.
And you're doing God's work over there.
Yes. Keep it up, please.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Helen. I found that personally really helpful, and I'm sure many, many other women will. So
And if
you.
anyone wants to find your work and communicate or reach out to you, where is it that they can find that or buy your books?
Yeah, just on yourown2feet.com.au. We have some bits on there, and the books are all on the Amazons. We've got the audio book coming out for divorce if you just want to listen to it while you're running or something, don't want the book around your house. Lots of different options.
It's probably not one you want to be featuring on your bedside table, is it?
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking with your friends about your salaries, all of that stuff.
And if you like what you heard, we would love if you could please hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode.
And it only takes 1 second, and it would really make our week, our month, our year.
Yeah.
So please do it. Okay. Love you. Bye.
Okay, quickly. The Curve was created to empower and educate you about investing, but we are not financial advisors.
Our platform exists for educational purposes only, and it doesn't provide personalized investing advice for your individual needs and should not be relied upon to make an investment or financial decision.
And always remember to do your own research before making any investment or financial decision.
We're here for any knowledge and support you need, but the final call is always yours.
And thanks for being here.
You got this.
Yeah, we know you got this.